Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. I'm calling to order this special meeting of the Council of the Town of Oakville. And tonight we have regrets from Councilor Lischina, Councilor Palmer, Councilor Sanju, and Councilor Grant. But the rest of us are here. And Councilor, are there any declarations of pecuniary interest? Madam Clerk, there are none. Our agenda item tonight is the Oakville Community Energy Plan. And this is a report on at least a year's worth of work by a large and very talented group of people. And Councilor Longo was the council's representative to that group. And we're going to recognize Councilor Longo now to make a few introductory remarks.
Thank you, Your Worship. Welcome, Oakville Energy Task Force members and Oakville citizens. I'm excited to host a special council meeting relating to the Community Energy Plan, with the final Oakville CEP being brought to Town Council for endorsement. I'm thankful for Council's commitment to the development of the plan, and more importantly, our continued commitment to support the CEP over the life of the plan. It was an honor being part of the Oakville Energy Task Force. The task force represents an amazing cross-section of our community. It was a collaborative and focused process. The CEP is supportive of Town Council's climate emergency resolution, and it is Council's call to action for our community as it relates to preparing for climate change. As a community, we need to come together to work collaboratively with a sense of hope and optimism to take measured steps towards implementing the CEP for our current and future generations.
Thank you, Councilor Longo. I'm now going to turn to staff to begin the evening with a presentation about the Community Energy Plan.
Great. Through you, Mr. Chair, thank you very much. And thank you, Councilor Longo, for those inspiring words. And again, thank you to the members of the public and the members of the Oakville Energy Task Force for being here tonight on this special council meeting. Tonight's presentation will be done in partnership with our co-chairs from the Oakville Energy Task Force, which I think really exemplifies the partnership that went in the process and the development of the Community Energy Plan. Staff will just be speaking really on the process that happened outside of the Oakville Energy Task Force, and then the co-chairs will be presenting you with the Community Energy Plan strategy. So the road to Oakville's Community Energy Plan didn't just start this year, didn't start last year. We've been looking at community energy planning since 2011 through our environmental strategic plan. We also brought a report to council in 2015 to look at starting this process. Staff here at Oakville really recognized that this was necessary for us to move forward and to accelerate climate action, was really looking at how we use energy and where we use energy in the community and how we can make a difference. So with that and the climate emergency resolution that was passed in June of last year, that really supported the work that was going on with the Community Energy Plan and accelerating climate action in the community. So as you can see, and I've brought this for you before, that the town hasn't really just started on climate action. We've been working on climate action since 2004, and this is just the culmination of years of work and looking at best practices globally as how we can move forward with this climate emergency. So the Community Energy Plan was developed and envisioned right from the beginning to be a community-owned plan, to work in partnership with a diverse sector of individuals, organizations, businesses, levels of government, really to ensure that the influence and how the reach of this plan could be completed and be successful. Every action we took on the development of the Community Energy Plan was to ensure its success, its sustainable success, and its long-term success. And really that started right from the beginning, and that was through developing a partnership with Sheridan College. Sheridan College has exemplified moving action forward on energy and climate change, and by their integrated energy and climate change master plan. Their community, their college is really a microcosm or a community that is working on climate action. So we formed this partnership to enable that community outlook, that community view. And we also were able to do it with funding from the Ontario government and the Federation of Canadian Municipalities. So it was a big project working team. When you're looking at doing something in partnership, we have quite a big number of people who started working on this project. And again, you can see on the slide the team that was from Oakville and the team that was from Sheridan. Now, the team on the right for the CEP strategy, all of the individuals listed here, this is a representation of an international group of individuals with global expertise and global experience in community energy planning and community energy data. We have individuals from Germany, from the US, from other local municipalities. So we were really able to tap into that global expertise to bring that experience, those lessons learned to the development of the community energy plan. So now I'm going to pass it to my guru and passionate Oakville project manager, Denise Ergen, who has really taken this project and led it. I can't take all of the credit. She has been a wonderful project manager. So I'm going to pass it to Denise just to give you an update on the first two phases of the development of the community energy plan before the task force was formed.
Thank you, Suzanne, and good evening. I'm going to walk you briefly through the two reports, Appendix B and Appendix C, that the culmination of this work done by the project working team really fed into the strategy that will be presented by the task force. Like Suzanne had mentioned, we had started working on the community energy plan and had project kickoff early 2018, so over 2 years ago. And our first questions were, where are we now in terms of our energy consumption? So what does all the energy activity within the municipal boundary of Oakville across all sectors look like? And we established that through a 2016 baseline. And then where will we be without a community energy plan? So if we continue on with business as usual, what will Oakville look like from an energy, greenhouse gas, and energy cost perspective? The lists that you see on the left-hand part of the slide are where we acquired all the data from. And so you can see we took quite a bit of effort to gather all these pieces of the puzzle together. This allowed us not only to get sectorial representation of the data, look at it by fuel type, but actually map out the data across Oakville so you could visually see what this energy activity looked like with an overlay that is in alignment with the livable Oakville urban structure. And so many of you have seen this before. This is Oakville's Sankey diagram, and this shows our 2016 energy from on the left-hand side, that's energy generation, through to consumption on the left-hand side. What's really important to note here is that that green section in the middle is all the energy that we pay for and is usable to us. So that's the actual energy that's getting to your light bulb or moving your car forward. The gray bar on the top and the gray cluster at the bottom is still energy we pay for, but it's not actually usable. And that's almost or just above 50% of the energy we pay for. Looking forward to 2050, it's more of the same, just on a larger scale, without a CEP. Our greenhouse gas emissions from 2016 to 2050 increase, but stabilize over time because of the expected efficiencies we know in the system, like densification. As you can see, though, they're well above where we need to reach in order to fulfill Canada's commitment to the Paris Agreement. We've overlaid the different sectors based on the colors that you can see here. So we have a teal color that's commercial and residential at the bottom. But you'll notice that transportation, the orange bar at the top, represents at least 50% of our greenhouse gas emissions, and the vast majority of that is from personal vehicle use. And the residential sector is the second largest, and that's mainly from natural gas consumption because our electricity grid is so low carbon. So all of this energy costs us money, and in 2016, we spent $620 million as a community on energy. Again, you'll notice that transportation and the residential sector are the largest pieces of that pie, but this time for the residential sector, that's really mostly comprised of our electricity costs. So in thinking about solutions, we really had to balance or think about the push and pull between greenhouse gas emissions and costs to consumers. More so, 80% of that, so 490 million, are actually leaving the community. So that means the money that we're spending on energy isn't going back into the local economy. Those energy dollars are landing at the provincial, national, or international level. And without a CEP, it's more of the same. So energy costs either quadruple or go up by 8 times to $2.6 billion a year and 5.3, with the same amount leaving the community. All of this information, as well as a full methodology on our analytical process, can be found in Appendix B of your staff report. Appendix C highlights our engagement process, which we really focused on in year 2 over 2019. And this was the delivery of an engagement plan, which is also found in Appendix C. We engaged through 5 key channels. We, of course, engaged with yourselves. We engaged with municipal departments to make sure that the recommendations coming from the task force are in alignment with the official plan, secondary and master plans, as well as other initiatives led by the town. We engaged with the public through an online web presence, social media, survey, as well as public presentations and events. We engaged, our fourth channel was what we called target networks. So that was when we engaged with groups like the Community Leaders Roundtable, Halton Equity and Diversity Roundtable, Youth through the Tech Under 20, and the Oakville Chamber of Commerce. And finally, we engaged through the development of the Oakville Energy Task Force. So this is 19 local leaders who convened 6 times over the course of 2019 and have already convened once in 2020 to really champion and advise on the community energy plan. Several of the members of the task force are present here tonight, and I would just ask them to stand quickly so you could see who they are. Thank you. I'm going to call 2 individuals, our co-chairs, John Maitison and Michelle McClellan, to share with you the strategy that was developed with the Oakville Energy Task Force. I'm going to provide a brief introduction to them both. John has over 20 years of experience in the power sector. Currently, John leads a team at Hatch responsible for helping electric utilities embrace the energy transition through resiliency planning, greenhouse gas reduction master plans, among other things. Hatch is Canada's largest private sector engineering firm, and its world headquarters are on the Oakville-Mississauga border. Hatch is a professional engineer and has lived in Oakville for 33 years. Michelle leads all aspects of Sheridan's built environment, including sustainability, land use, and infrastructure planning, new construction, renovations, and facilities management. Michelle has over 25 years in municipal government and administration in the UK and Canada. She's been a strong advocate for sustainability principles, social responsibility, and community-focused approach.
Mayor Burton and members of Council, thank you so much for the opportunity to present tonight and for arranging this special meeting of Council. It's an absolute pleasure for John and I to be here and an honour to present on behalf of the task force. Before I begin, I would like to acknowledge once again the extraordinary amount of thanks to all of the incredible task force members, to our incredible consulting team, and to members of council, Councillor Longo, and also the leadership here at the town for committing the time of your fabulous staff, including Denise and Suzanne, to this really important initiative. I would also like to take the opportunity to recognise our amazing team from Sheridan and my dear friend and colleague Herb Sinek, who was really instrumental in this project and is very sorry that he couldn't be here tonight. He is in Ottawa doing important work for Sheridan on the national stage, and I promised I would give him a wave, so hello, Herb. We believe that what we are doing is exceptional. There are very few communities who have worked together in partnership to create a plan that is ambitious yet achievable. Recognising that addressing the challenges that we face, committing to a future of conscious decision-making and tangible action isn't just a government issue, it isn't just industry's issue, and it isn't just the community's issue. It's our collective responsibility to acknowledge that we have a problem and a climate emergency, develop a way forward and implement action that leads us to a community-driven solution. And that's what makes this strategy so important. This is a high-level look at how the strategy is structured. Clear goals, guiding principles, and strategies that are designed for implementation. We have intentionally lifted out the key pieces into the document and separated the analytical engagement reports as Denise described. Our tagline is community-driven energy solutions, and that's exactly what we are presenting tonight. They reflect our year-long process of understanding the data and providing our collective sector perspectives, experiences, and more. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the vision and goals, and John is going to take us through the strategic directions and the implementation framework. Founded on community collaboration and innovation, Oakville's sustainable energy future is clean, affordable, and resilient. A simple, understandable, and very clear message. And we had really active engagement around the table about that vision, proving that simple isn't always easy. The task force chose really pragmatic over aspirational goals, meaning they can be achieved within existing technologies, processes, and systems. But notwithstanding this decision, the task force does recognise that achieving these goals represents transformation of Oakville's energy system, and that the Oakville Community Energy Plan should be updated regularly to respond to the changes in climate policy, energy policy, and global best practice. 2041 aligns with the province's planning horizon, and as Denise articulated, we did choose this to ensure that it aligns with livable Oakville and other secondary plans. So goal number 1, energy efficiency, to increase energy efficiency by at least 40% by 2041. And this is based on a 2016 baseline. Efficiency includes the entire energy system from supply through distribution to end use. And this includes transportation, industrial, commercial, institutional, and residential. Goal number 2, emissions reduction. Enable transition to a goal of carbon neutrality by reducing greenhouse gas emissions by at least 50% by 2041. Again, based on a 2016 baseline, emissions also consider the entire energy system. Economic return, and this is a big number. Return at least $7 billion in cumulative energy cost savings to the community by 2041. And these savings are returned to consumers through future cost avoidance and consider opportunities for savings from the entire energy system. These energy dollars remain in the local community, the local economy, benefiting consumers and creating jobs. Local job creation occurs in 3 ways: directly, indirectly, and induced jobs, which are created when newly hired workers working in direct or indirect jobs spend their new earnings on goods and services. The economic goal is based on a low price range of projected energy cost increases. So should they increase more quickly, we would have to review this goal. So they say a picture paints 1,000 words. Well, perhaps a video is priceless. A shout out to my colleague, Dave Clark from Sheridan, who's here tonight and who put this animation together. So this is the point at which I hope that, here we go. Let's see if my,
Well, definitely worth more than 1,000 words. Thank you. So as Michelle mentioned, I'm going to take us into the strategic directives and then into the implementation as well. So the community energy strategy breaks down into 4 core strategic directions that break down a little bit further into programs that I will get to. But each one of these have huge opportunities to reduce our greenhouse gas emissions and improve our energy efficiency across the community. So beginning at number 1 here, homes and buildings. As mentioned earlier today, residential homes make up more than 1/4 of our greenhouse gas emissions. And we are about half as efficient as global benchmarks, so we have a lot of opportunity for improvement here. In the homes and buildings area, we're really focusing on the existing existing homes that are in the community, recognizing that roughly 60% of the homes today will still be around in 2041. What we're proposing is a business-based approach to retrofit the majority of the existing homes. And not just looking at 1 or 100 or even 1,000, but we're looking at an 80% of the roughly 70,000 homes in Oakville that would need to be retrofitted between now and 2041. You'll notice that we have recommended a performance and not a prescriptive approach as technology changes, and it changes so rapidly. This is also focused on creating a market for one of the other items that we're looking at is creating an energy efficiency market. So you can compare this to the stickers that are on your appliances telling you how much energy your washer or your dryer uses. What's being proposed is putting a similar type sticker on a home so that the buyer would be able to be aware of what the energy efficiency is of that home, creating some type of economic incentive for the owner to improve. You could even include what the greenhouse gas emissions of that residence might be. In addition to existing homes, we're also proposing continuing to improve building standards within the community, and proposing some interesting financing options where you assess properties based on or property assessed financing as opposed to owner assessed. Moving into the industrial efficiency side of things, industrial activity is most often regulated and guided by broader global best practices and standards. So industry industries within the community have been doing a lot of work to improve their own efficiencies already, and as it turns out, Oakville is actually in a pretty good state compared to global best practices. It demonstrates better energy and emissions performance than some other markets that we've compared to, and this provides us an opportunity to share our best practices with the world. A note here is that aspects of the other 3 strategic directives do interact and include local industry. Moving to local supply and distributions, centralized power systems do tend to have increased losses as power is generated quite remotely and then transmitted to your local home. This increases losses and also reduces resiliency within the system. The approaches and the strategies that we're looking at are a logical approach really focused on reducing space heating and greenhouse gas emissions that come with that. And that's driven by all of your natural gas boilers and furnaces and hot water tanks. High priorities within this strategic directive are focused in on implementing a district energy system within the community, focused in on medium and high density areas. Initially, this would be provided by natural gas with the potential to blend in lower carbon sources over time, including such sources as biofuels, heat pump systems, and electric heaters. The plan also includes an increase in solar PV generation within the community, targeting nearly 10% by 2041. Also, it includes using solar power to heat hot water and thus reducing the carbon emissions through traditional means. The 4th element, the 4th strategic directive here is transportation efficiency. Transportation accounts for almost half of the community-wide GHG emissions and roughly half of the total energy dollars spent within Oakville. 70% of our transportation activity is single or is personal vehicle use. The current level of electric vehicle usage within Oakville is less than 1%, although it is growing quite quickly. The current share of cycling and walking within the community is roughly 3%, and public transit use is far from where it should be. Given the scale and the complexity of these transportation challenges, systemic change is required, and the systemic change that is necessary is going to require significant policy-driven initiatives and involves coordination and action from all levels of government. Public electric vehicle infrastructure, Town of Oakville electrifying its transit network, and other corporate fleets within the community can make a step change improvement to the deployment of electric vehicles. These 4 strategic directives have led us to a number of priority projects that we plan on focusing on within the first 5 years of the program. You will note that these are color-coded here to align with, if I go back a slide, to the 4 strategic directives listed here. There are multiple delivery partners that have been identified for each of these projects so that there isn't a single entity that would be required or expected to deliver each. It's also worth noting that there are multiple policy initiatives in here that are helping us to continue to align the existing policies within the town to some of the targets that are proposed in the strategy. And as we highlighted in our economic goals, by having and simply by having an economic goal, we want the priority projects to be financially sustainable and ideally even profitable. So 3 of these in particular are subject to developing business cases for them before proceeding. To be successful, these projects really require a combination of short-term successes and setting up for longer-term success in some of the projects here that will require many more than the 5 years to effectively implement across the community. A couple of specific examples worth pointing out here is number 1, developing a business case, then eventually a company to supply energy efficiency retrofits for homes that would help create standardized retrofit options across communities that would leverage economies of scale and help homeowners to keep costs down while creating a economically positive business opportunity for such an energy efficiency company. Another option to point out is number 11, in increasing the number of public electric vehicle charging stations. There's a case study that's been deployed, actually currently in place in Markham, where Electric Utilities has worked with Markham to deploy a number of charging stations at a facility there. And the original number that they wanted to deploy was based on the number of EVs that the staff had. But the decision was made to install quite a few more with the hope that if you build them, they will come. And sure enough, that's exactly what happened. Within a fairly short period of time, having the charging infrastructure in place certainly increased the number of people that were driving cars, electric vehicles. Within the priority projects themselves, we've developed objectives and targets, and then identified what we need to do within the next 5 years, specifically within the priority projects. For these projects, we have established milestones, we have schedules in place and timelines, and we've estimated resource requirements. We also are identifying delivery partners that we would work with in deploying these projects. In parallel to developing the strategy, we have been working to secure, as mentioned, the delivery partners, and we've even begun progress on a number of the priority projects. Suzanne will speak a little bit later about some of the projects where the town has been involved or has been identified to be involved, but we're in active conversations with other organizations to lead some of these items. So who's going to do all of this? Well, there have been hundreds of community energy plans created across Canada and North America over the last couple of decades. And only a handful of these have really had meaningful success. So we recognize that delivering and achieving the benefits of this strategy has to be a combination of a community-wide efforts and having sufficient governance and delivery processes in place. It's imperative that we all work together as a community, where the town is one member of that community, to achieve success. It's one thing to aim for the stars, but really only manage to climb to the top of the CN Tower. It's another to aim for the moon, but create a plan and actually achieve it. So what we're proposing is an Implementation Management Office, or an IMO, as we're affectionately calling it. The IMO is an independent entity that will be structured as a not-for-profit organization with the role of working across the community to deliver this strategy. Its mission is to lead and champion community-wide implementation of the strategy and achieve the 2041 goals. The task force has developed a number of recommendations to help accelerate the creation of the IMO, and these are meant to be a starting point and not necessarily the final answer. As the IMO actually turns into creation and the team to run it are onboarded, the actual plans might change slightly. We have seen the model of this IMO is loosely based on other models that we have interacted with other communities, including Guelph, not too far away, as well as kind of the gold star standard in Boltrop, Germany. However, our recommendations for our IMO reflect the business perspectives of members within the Oakville Energy Task Force and the kind of lessons learned from these other comparable IMOs. We feel that this is really the best chance at success to truly mobilize a transformation within the community. It is also an opportunity for Oakville to be seen as a North American prototype for energy excellence. With other municipalities already interested in learning what we are doing, the project working team has been in contact with a number of other communities, both within Halton and outside of that, and there is significant interest and a lot of eyes kind of watching what we're doing to see the success that we're going to have here. So those 4 strategic directives roll out into what we've called here as 6 program leads. This is the proposed organizational structure of the IMO. The organization has been built around the strategy and to support the delivery partners. It brings in expertise and resources that will provide accountability and ensure delivery and that the strategy remains on track. Everything within the blue portion of this chart here are the roles that would fit within the IMO itself, with the kind of second and third row being the core staff within the organization. The gray down below, these would be the proposed delivery partners working with the IMO to achieve success. As mentioned, or as noted, there's a couple of delivery partners here we've recommended as the town, and there's already been some conversations here to confirm town's support in a couple of these programs as well. This team sort of reflects the scale of the opportunity. Remember, we are talking about bringing $7 billion back into the community between now and 2041. And as such, you do require a decent-sized organization to achieve and hold to be accountable for the success of these priority projects and the strategy. Success will be measured through the delivery of the priority projects, and the IMO, as mentioned, will be responsible to a board of directors and the public, and most likely the funding organizations that support the seed capital of the IMO. And speaking of capital, this is a preliminary budget that's been proposed for the IMO. To ensure success, the IMO certainly requires adequate resources to realize the opportunities. Currently, our priority is raising financial contributions to hire staff as general management in order to kick off the IMO, with a focus and first priority being an executive director. We also prioritizing in-kind contributions for program leads and other operations, which would include the supply of office space, utilities, marketing, low-cost legal services, etc. This really is a recommendation at the end of the day. And as mentioned, the executive director, once on board, will eventually own and thus will have input into the final organization and the budget. Even though the CEP has been a two-year endeavor, or over two-year endeavor, that we're presenting to you today, your endorsement of the strategy and the recommendation to be presented by Suzanne after this is the start of our commitment to building and launching the IMO later this fall. The task force continues to meet and advance the IMO with our next meeting scheduled in March, which will be focused on the actual launch of the IMO later this fall, and as well as securing financial support. It's worth noting that we have already applied to one grant opportunity recently. With that, I'd like to thank you for your time, and I will yet again thank the task force members that are here and those that couldn't make it this evening, and the project working team for the incredible support and work that they've done over the last 2 years. And looking forward to now really getting down to achieve positive change in our community. At this point, I hand it over to Suzanne.
Thank you, John and Michelle, for representing the community energy plan work so well. So we do have 4 recommendations before you that were provided in the staff report. And those were to receive the report, to endorse the community energy plan strategy, and to approve a financial contribution of $100,000 in 2020 for the Oakville Energy Task Implementation Management Office, as well as to authorize an extension of the Memorandum of Understanding between Sheridan College and the Town of Oakville to September 2020. We do have various delegates tonight as well to speak to the community energy plan, and we also are available for questions from council, for staff, and or the co-chairs, task force members.
Thank you very much. All I can say to start is I think what we'll do is we'll hear the delegations, and then council will have a full set of information from which to ask questions. But I'd just like to say at the start that our community is justly famous for the degree of engagement that we have with each other. But our community engagement is reaching new heights with this, to reach such consensus in so varied a group of residents and businesses. And it's only with this kind of cooperation, coordination, and group vision that we're gonna make any progress against this. So I congratulate you all for your hard work. I thank you very much. I feel for you for the amount of time you devoted to 2 years of meetings. And I salute the product that you've produced. And with that, Madam Clerk, would you call the delegations?
The first delegation is Rob Lister from Oakville Hydro.
Good evening, Mayor Burton, members of council. I'm here this evening from Oakville Enterprises and Oakville Hydro to communicate our support for the Community Energy Plan. Oakville Hydro has been a working member of the Community Energy Task Force since its inception, and we're very excited to be part of this great initiative. Oakville Hydro offers broad support of the recommended governance structure, including the IMO and the project partnerships. Through our 100-year-plus history, Oakville Hydro has partnered with customers and suppliers on delivering safe and reliable and affordable electricity. Under the Community Energy Plan, we look forward to drawing on our established experience in the energy sector to assist the task force and the IMO in making homes, transportation, and businesses achieve higher levels of energy efficiency with low or no emissions solutions. We believe that we can lend our business acumen and experience in 3 ways. We can help prepare a business case for establishing a company to deliver energy retrofits for homes and buildings in Oakville. We can establish a community of practice to share industrial energy management expertise, and by leveraging our internal innovation team to establish a business case for the distribution of low-emission thermal energy through a series of district energy systems in Oakville. Oakville Hydro is proud to be part of a community that wants to work towards achieving world-class energy performance, greenhouse gas reductions, and climate change resiliency. We're happy to do our part in making Oakville the most livable town in Canada. Thank you very much.
Next delegate is Tracy L. Harrison, trustee from the Halton District School Board.
Hello, everyone. Good evening. Thank you very much for your time. The Halton District School Board is in support of the Community Energy Strategy, and here are some of the reasons why. The HDSB is one of the region's largest employers with about 8,000 employees. Together, we have responsibility for supporting 65,000 students through their elementary and secondary learning journeys. It's our responsibility to respond to climate pressure, not only in how we manage our buildings and sites, but also through the learning processes that happen every day, ultimately to empower positive change. The Oakville Community Energy Strategy therefore aligns with the board's commitment to environmental stewardship and sustainability. The board's ongoing commitment includes reducing energy use in our buildings, greening of school grounds, promoting active transportation for students, as well as embracing waste diversion and recycling programs in schools. Energy and climate literacy fit with curriculum expectations related to sustainability and stewardship of local and global environment, health and well-being, economic development, and importantly, social justice. Student-centered action is front and center in HDSB schools from the earliest years through programs such as Learning for a Sustainable Future and Eco Schools. Student-initiated actions such as those taken by youth through Generation Green are already pushing all of us and pushing the system for greater and more impactful responses to climate change. Right now, we're in the process of developing our next multi-year plan that will guide us for the next 4 years. And we've heard from our shared community and students that environmental leadership needs to be elevated and become a key pillar of that plan.
HDSB has been an active member on several municipal and regional environmental committees, including the Halton Climate Collective, alongside the town of Oakville. And we want to also thank the Oakville Energy Task Force for including the board in this partnership for our collective community. So almost the bottom line is that HDSB is on board and looking forward to finding and collaborating on the opportunities that emerge from this strategy. For example, one of the strategic objectives is to implement district energy opportunities in high-growth areas. We know that areas of high growth naturally and usually require new schools. This could be a wonderful opportunity for the HDSB, along with the town and other potential partners and funding agencies, to develop a district energy community model. The endorsement of the strategy and the establishment of the IMO will provide beneficial opportunities for the community, including the staff and students of the HDSB, for the environment and for all of our collective future. As such, we encourage Town Council to endorse the strategy and support its implementation. Thank you so very much for your time. Next delegation is Katie Renus from Sheridan College.
Good evening, all. I think I have a
I'll do it for you.
slide deck. Well, I guess while we're waiting for this to come up, representing Sheridan College, I'm very, very excited to see this community energy plan, and being a partner of the community energy plan as it's being developed. It's really exciting to see the town and all the key members really taking a really big initiative on sustainability, and it really puts the town forward as a trailblazer in sustainability and climate change. So I'm super excited about this plan, and Sheridan is also very excited about this plan. So I'm here today just to give a quick overview of what we're doing at Sheridan and what we can do to try and help with the plan. Okay. So back in 2012, Sheridan College, if you look at this graph, we were more on the left-hand side of things. We were a policy-driven, incremental, reactive. We were very reactive when it came to energy, and we realized that there was a lot of risk associated with continuing to do business as normal. So we really needed to look at and develop a strategy to actually mitigate our risk and become leaders in the sustainability lens. So in 2013, the Board of Governors approved a $23 million integrated energy and climate master plan, which was set out to reduce our energy consumption by 50% and our carbon emissions by 50% by the year 2030. One of the key things is we needed to make sure that that it had the right economics. We were able to be a role model within the community, and because we are a teaching institution, we wanted to make sure we were able to develop curriculum so that we're able to support and train the upcoming workforce with technologies and practices to push these initiatives forward. So where we are today. We have built 2 global best practice district energy centers. We've retrofitted approximately 50% of our buildings across both campuses, and we've improved the overall comfort within all the spaces. We have completed numerous building envelope initiatives, which really improve the resiliency of our facilities, and also improves the comfort of the space. One of the key things, actually having this integrated energy and climate master plan moving forward really opened up a lot of opportunities for Sheridan College. What we realized was that with the plan, we were pretty much shovel ready when it came to grants and funding opportunities, particularly from the provincial and federal government. And I'm sure, as all of us know, usually when you get funding from the provincial and federal government, it comes with very, very tight timelines. So we just really wanted to make sure that we were in a plan, we were in a position where we could be proactive and be ready for when funding became available. We actually have hit our carbon target. We've reduced our carbon by 54%, and we're well on our way to our energy target. So we're very happy with the progress that we've made so far, and we think we will definitely be able to hit our targets by the 2030 deadline. Above and beyond that, we were able to, Sheridan College was able to collaborate with many partners, both locally and also globally. We were able to present and speak at conferences and events around the world. And this also really gave us the tools to be able to work with our faculty and staff to develop curriculum, again, so that we can teach the upcoming workforce. The other nice thing about it is, about the plan, is that we were able to be recognized both locally and globally. So we people do know about what we're doing, and it's really put a light on, on what we're doing and the initiatives that we're covering, and I think our next steps with the community energy plan, we're focusing on trying to hit a more aggressive energy target. So Sheridan needs to make sure that we're contributing and doing our part. So currently we're currently putting together our 30-year campus master plan, and Sheridan is really focusing on the sustainability and the sustainability of that plan. And we want to make sure that that plan is in line with the town of Oakville's initiatives. We are also developing our Mission Zero 2024 plan, which is a strategy to guide Sheridan towards carbon neutrality, because we are part of the town's puzzle, and we need to make sure that we're doing our part. Thank you. This is my first time.
The next delegation is Shirin Karubi from the Danish District Energy Association.
Okay. I also have a slide that's there. Oh. Okay. Hello, councillors. My name is Shirin Karubi, representing Denmark, and I'm thrilled to be here tonight to put forth Denmark's support for the town of Oakville's community energy plan. I'd like to give some background information on what I do and how I work with local communities. So I'm a trade advisor for the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs Trade Council. The specific sectors I work within is sustainable community development and district energy. At the Trade Council, I provide support for Danish companies wishing to enter the North American markets, and provide support to local communities trying to get to their sustainability goals. A significant part of my work is rooted in public diplomacy, which allows the Trade Council to provide support to local communities. And this can take the form of setting up workshops, as we've done for the City of Brampton, facilitating meetings with relevant stakeholders, as we've done for Sheridan College, or just simply providing our own expertise in global best practices, as we've done for DC Water in Washington. My background is based in environmental planning, and I have public sector experience both in Ontario and British Columbia. So Denmark would support the implementation of the Community Energy Plan's district energy system. Before I explain how and why we can provide this support, I'd like to give a general overview of district energy. District energy is not a new technology or concept. It's been around in North America for quite some time, servicing military bases, campuses, and hospitals. The first district energy system in Canada was actually in London, Ontario in 1880, and it was servicing the local hospital, university, and government buildings. So it's the process of distributing heat or cooling to multiple buildings from an energy center. An image like this is pretty standard in simplifying the description for district energy. One question that I had when I first learned about district energy was, okay, so it's providing me heat and cold air, but I'm not quite sure where the energy portion comes on. Like, how can I actually turn on my lights from hot or cold water? So when you are also able to have electricity in your district energy system, that's called CHP, or combined heat and power. In this system where you have combined heat and power, the heat produced from generating electricity is used as a thermal heat for the distribution system. So in this case, the heat is not wasted, and it's an additional thing to the energy system that you have, producing electricity. So you can have a system that's district cooling, district heating and cooling, or combined heat and power, all commonly referred to as district energy. Many parts of a district energy system determines whether or not sustainable or low carbon. There are lots of ways to heat water and produce electricity. Coal, for example, is one of them, but it's not very low carbon. You can also use natural gas. Copenhagen just installed a waste-to-energy center. In addition to municipal waste, you can use biomass, and you can also use geothermal using the Earth's heat from its core. The point I'm getting at is that district energy allows for a lot of flexibility in different types of fuel sources for communities to get to a more renewable source, and giving them the option of keeping that capital that they're spending on energy within that community. So another benefit of a district energy system is that the energy produced can come in a small scale. So eliminating the need for anything large or industrial. These small-scale community centers can be tailored to the neighborhood and can also incorporate community amenities. This slide shows Vancouver's Southeast Falls Creek Neighborhood Energy Utility. This energy center started in 2010 and has expanded to service 4,300,000 square feet of residential, commercial, and industrial space. The energy provides space heat and hot water to the neighborhood. And the community also decided to add in lighting elements. So if you see in that picture, it's kind of purple. It represents different types of energy and how much carbon has been saved. This slide shows the Copenhagen New Arc Energy Center. In Copenhagen, this energy center has a ski hill on top of it and a climbing wall. The climbing wall is actually expected to go all the way up, but because they just implemented it, they wanted people to start using it, so they have a smaller scale for now. But this is a good example of community amenities that can be brought in. They also have an education department that does public tours if the community wants to learn more about their energy sources. So like anything, as time moves forward, technologies improve and it becomes more efficient, and that's true of district energy. However, these advancements were not reflected in North America the same way that they were in Europe, because Denmark did not have access to oil the same way North America did during the 70s oil crisis. They had to look to alternative approaches towards energy. So fast forward 50 years, Denmark and the Nordics have developed an extremely efficient low-carbon district energy system that involves many innovative forms of technology and equipment. Denmark now has a fourth-generation district energy system that has taken 50 years of trial and error to achieve. Currently, Copenhagen meets 97% of its heating needs through district energy, while in Canada, we're still at 1% to 2%. The Community Energy Plan places Oakville to become an energy leader in North America, an example for other municipalities to follow in implementing global best practices in energy distribution and development. In addition to reaching Oakville's low carbon reduction goals, the economic benefits include lower heat and fuel maintenance costs, increased reliability in a decentralized grid system, keeping the $1.2 billion estimated to be spent in 2041 within Oakville, and reducing energy poverty. So this energy plan not only invests in our environment, but also in Oakville's future economy. It took decades for Denmark to reach this energy independence, and with the knowledge that we've gained along with the rest of the Nordics, we're committed to supporting Oakville in becoming energy independent. So I'd like to conclude by explaining how we can actually provide support. At the Trade Council, we can bring in resources in the way of expertise to assist in implementing Oakville's energy plan and ensuring that you have access to the best global best practices. In Pittsburgh, for example, we facilitated an MOU between Pittsburgh and Aarhus and applied for funding through the Danish Ministry of Foreign Affairs, which brought in a district energy expert from the utility in Aarhus to work on Pittsburgh's district energy plans. So Pittsburgh now gets a resource that has gone through the trial and error of a district energy system, and they've worked in a world-class utility. We see this as more of a 5-year dialogue with the town of Oakville, with an opportunity with a partnership with a sister city in Denmark. There's also a tremendous value in visiting similar communities in Denmark and seeing these energy systems firsthand. We've taken many municipalities to Denmark, including Toronto and Brampton. These visits focus on technology solutions as well as policy, regulation, and implementation that we think would greatly complement the town of Oakville's energy plan. We're here to help you implement your plan and reach your energy independence. Thank you.
Next delegate is Uzair Kokar.
So I would like to begin by thanking the Town Council of Oakville that has taken time out of its tight schedule to hold this special council meeting tonight. But I haven't come here alone. I stand here with the immense burden of dreams and hopes of every citizen of Oakville, especially the 200 youth members of Generation Green that believe in a secure and sustainable future. It would be wrong if I don't acknowledge the efforts of the municipality of Oakville that has took substantial steps towards reducing its carbon footprint to just 1.35% of the total emissions and oversees several projects that combat climate change. However, the time has really come for the town of Oakville to take the one extra step towards a sustainable future that is clean, affordable, and resilient. I'm talking about the Community Energy Plan proposed by the Oakville's Energy Task Force. This plan establishes a vision that serves the needs of the community, government, and the market. In simple words, it's the new version of the current centralized energy system that is more efficient, effective, and futuristic in approach. Keeping 2016 as the base year, the Community Energy Plan sets its eyes on 2041, which perhaps seems far away, but still, we must prepare for it if we wish 2041 to be economically, socially, and politically thriving. Hence, please make no mistake that the town of Oakville will not find a more pragmatic and progressive plan that encompasses all factors, which include transportation, buildings, housing, electricity, and trade in its mission statement. Some individuals might argue that this plan is not well designed or realistic. In reality, it's not true. It has been carefully subdivided into various subcategorized programs. For instance, it features short-term priority projects for 2021 to 2025 and long-term projects for 2041. With the formation of IMO, Implementation Management Office, the Community Energy Plan will work towards its SMART goals and efficient strategies like increasing local electricity generation and providing a faster supply through insulated pipes. Allow me to briefly explain how the city of Oakville would experience an economic boost through this initiative. During this time when the world economy, including Canada, is facing an economic slowdown, programs such as Community Energy Plan work towards stimulating the dropping business activity and provide a multiplying effect. For instance, the council spending on this program would be the income for several local businesses, who in return would spend that income on more local businesses within Oakville. So this continuing chain of income and spending would strengthen Oakville's employment, local GDP, and per capita figures. Keeping in mind that Oakville is under an official climate crisis emergency, I would urge the council to waste no time in approving this plan that equips the community with a tool to fight climate crisis. The youth of Oakville has inherited this crisis, and we are ready to fight this. But the question remains, are you all? Thank you.
Next delegate is Mervyn Russell.
Your Worship, Mayor Burton, honourable councillors, council staff, fellow citizens. My name is Mervyn Russell, and I'm speaking on behalf of the Council of Canadians Halton Chapter. I think we should all be pleased that this community energy plan is being submitted for Council's endorsement today. Town Council is to be commended in taking the decision to follow through on its climate energy resolution by approaching Sheridan College to be a partner in preparing a process to promote community involvement in reducing energy use in this municipality. Further congratulations are in order to these two partners in achieving a broad sector buy-in from public institutions, businesses, community organizations, and members of the general public. Similarly, we should appreciate the production of the report itself, which I understand has been put into finalized form by two staff members, Denise Ergen and Suzanne Madden, which is excellent work. I understand that community energy plans have been produced in numerous municipalities, but the only ones that have achieved significant results are those like the Oakville plan that have been developed and are then managed by a community consortium. So we should then have good expectations regarding the potential for the success of this plan that focuses on four main areas: home building efficiency, industrial efficiency, energy supply and distribution, and transportation, with energy reduction targets for each focus. However, and I expect you may very well have been waiting for this, however, I do have concerns about this report. First, I'm concerned that the report does not begin by placing its strategy within the larger global context. Continuing to make Oakville the most desirable place to live in Canada is a laudable goal, but not a large enough one when we're considering this global emergency. This plan is Oakville's contribution to relieving a global crisis that knows no borders, not even with Mississauga. The fact that the report's focus is on energy rather than on reduction of carbon emissions is a related concern. This plan should have been called a carbon emissions reduction plan. Obviously, burning carbon to produce energy releases emissions. Burn less carbon and you have fewer emissions. But carbon emissions reduction includes more than prevention. It also includes alternatives such as biking or walking instead of driving, and capture by trees, grass, and roof gardens, all of which are within the jurisdiction of municipalities. With these things in mind, it's disappointing that the report is aimed at achieving 50% reduction of carbon emissions by 2041, rather than the Paris Agreement targets of 45% by 2030 and 0 by 2050. Similarly, there are no intermediate year targets mentioned to measure how well the plan is working. Oakville produces one of the largest tonnages of carbon per capita in Canada, and Canada produces one of the largest tonnages per capita in the world, after the Gulf states. Oakville has a lot of reducing to do to meet the Paris Agreement targets. The report says it has decided to settle on practical targets rather than aspirational ones. I must respectfully confess to finding this phrasing rather mealy-mouthed. I understand that one does not want to overreach and, as a result, cause disappointment. But doing what is practical can so easily become doing what is convenient. When faced with a known, oncoming, and increasing emergency, doing the unconventional, taking risks, inspiring people is in order and necessary. China built several good-sized emergency hospitals in 10 days. I regret to say that nowhere did the report convey to me a sense of urgency in the face of existential danger to the health, safety, and sustainability of all future living beings. Let us not be mediocre, but magnificent. Over and above this general point, I have other concerns regarding aspects of the implementation of the plan which seem to me to be hazy. First is the relationship between the Oakville Energy Task Force, which currently exists, and the Oakville Implementation Management Organization, which the task force is to bring into being. Clearly, the task force is going to continue for some time if it has to complete this objective. But it seems to be suggested in the report that the task force will continue in being even after the implementation organization is up and running. Am I right in thinking that the task force also has the responsibility of completing half of the so-called priority projects? These projects start the implementation of the plan. In some cases, this involves bringing new organizations into being, such as a retrofit entity, a network of industrial best practices, a district energy company, as well as promoting a mandatory energy labeling program and developing accountable procedures for all these programs. If these are the responsibilities of the task force, how is this huge set of tasks to be done, bearing in mind that the task force is a voluntary part-time organization? The 14 longer-term tasks are intended to be undertaken by the implementation organization. It will have, presumably, volunteer directors, but also 4 paid staff. The promotion of the implementation organization is to be financed by an initial $100,000 seed money grant by the town of Oakville, with $50,000 coming from the 2020 town budget and a further $50,000 coming, hopefully, from town reserve funds. After that, the council may provide a further $50,000 in grants until 2024 on condition that there are other sufficient funds forthcoming from other levels of government, grant agencies, and businesses. Clearly, there remains some significant uncertainty about the financial viability of fulfilling the plan. So the question arises, are there firm indications, or indeed commitments, that after Council has endorsed the plan and begun to release the first 100,000, other funding will be forthcoming, particularly from businesses? How will the request for funding of the projects be presented to businesses so as to be an attractive marketing proposal? What is in it for businesses? At the same time, 6 of the priority projects are the responsibility of the town. Again, these large tasks involving the development of policy as regards new and current buildings, plus the implementation of the electrification of town-owned vehicles and staff. At present, there are only, as I understand it, 2 members of the town's climate action group. Mention is made of additional staff to promote these projects. How many? Will these extra staff expenses be part of the $170,000 financing in kind from the town? I hope that when the task force is seeking directors for the implementation organization, that not only persons with business experience and expertise will be sought, but that persons with environmental experience and expertise will also be sought. It will be the committed environmentalists, whether professional or amateur, who will keep the implementation management organization's directors' feet to the fire, reminding the directors that we need to act urgently and significantly if all of us are not to get burned. Which brings me to my last point. If this plan is going to have any significant impact on our community, it must be brought widely and continually to the public's attention. First, there must be a big public buy-in. The gaping omission in the entire strategy of the plan is marketing. First, the task force and then the implementation management organization must have a contract with a first-class marketing company. Meghan and Harry have already signed up for one of the best to promote their Royal Sussex brand. A climate energy plan is more important than celebrity chic. This plan needs a brand and a messaging strategy. If an old cleric like me can see this, surely it should be obvious to those in much more practical professions than mine. This whole is one that must be plucked. Concluding, I don't want to sound negative about this plan. We can destroy the good by insisting on the perfect. There never is an agreed perfect. There's a lot of good content in this plan. I wish it every success, but I, and I'm sure others, will continue to keep their eye upon it. Thank you, and good luck.
The next delegate is Aki Tanaka, Climate Reality Leader.
Mayor Burton and members of council, my name is Aki Tanaka, and I've lived in Oakville for 33 years. I'm a climate reality leader trained by Al Gore and an engineer by training. I organized the Oakville climate strike in September of 2019, on the same day that Greta was in Montreal. And we have a Facebook group as a result of that strike, which has over 100 members and is growing steadily, and you're all welcome to join it. Congratulations to the entire Community Energy Plan team. I particularly want to recognize the efforts of the members of the task force who donated their time. Karen Brock of Oakville Green, and the 2 members of the general public, Pauline Watson and Harry Shea. I believe all the other members were paid for most of their time by their own employers. I attended all 6 of the public meetings for the CEP and was consistently impressed by the work being done by all the members of the team. I have done my best to get through the report in the time given, and these are the 3 requests I have for Town Council. First, please consider the allocation of more funds to the town's climate action team, which I believe is currently staffed by about 4 people. The success of the CEP depends on the establishment of the Implementation Management Office. More dedicated resources at the town will allow the IMO to be established more quickly and to begin implementing actions. This would be appropriate as we are in a climate emergency. Second, I urge the town to consider other ways of reducing greenhouse gas emissions that were not in the scope of the CEP. This would be actions like reducing food waste and planting and protecting native trees and plants to sequester carbon. And I would hope that that approach would be done in the same way that energy was approached. Third, I asked the town and the IMO to maintain the consultative approach. Please continue to invite residents groups, communities of faith, cultural groups, environmental advocacy groups, people in healthcare, students, young people, seniors, and others to be part of the conversation. This will strengthen and improve the actions flowing from the plan. Thank you.
The next delegate is Daryl Diamond.
First, I'd like to thank the cleric. That was fantastic. Mr. Mayor, council, and members of the task force and citizens, I reviewed the detailed plan. It was fantastic, by the way. Lots of detail, but I have a few points to make as well. The main points are that we should select achievable goals in the near term, something that we can measure by the next municipal election. That's 2022. The second thing is be realistic. And the third is measure and report annually on responsible metrics, so we can see actually what's going on here. Now, I have some other points that I didn't hear mentioned in the report, and I think are rather important. One is the concept of embodied energy. Now, embodied energy isn't a term I saw in the report, but it's very important. When we buy or construct a product or a vehicle or a plant or anything like that, we invest a lot of money in terms of CO2 production in that product. For instance, 1 ton of aluminum takes about 15,000 kilowatt hours of energy. That's 15 tons of CO2. Now, if that aluminum is produced in China, that's 15 tons of CO2 from coal. If it's produced in Quebec, it's a heck of a lot less. So when you buy stuff, consider where it comes from, consider the CO2 embodied in that product. Now, here's a good example. A Tesla Model X is about 1,800 kilograms in its aluminum frame. Currently, Tesla buys aluminum from China and other sources that use a lot of CO2. That means that in addition to its battery, which uses about 100 kilograms CO2 per kilowatt hour, a Model X contains about 37 tons of CO2 from its production. That belies the idea that electric vehicles of themselves are an efficient CO2 reduction task or tactic. For instance, if you compare a Tesla with an average vehicle, 22 miles per gallon, the recovery time, because an average vehicle only has about 4.6 tons, wait a minute, sorry about that. An average vehicle, 4.6 tons of CO2, because it's made out of steel, which costs a lot less than CO2. It takes about 8 years to pay back the extra CO2 embodied in a Tesla before that Tesla pays for itself in CO2. If you compare a Tesla to a more efficient vehicle like a Toyota Prius, Ford Fusion Electric or whatnot, it takes 17 years to pay back the CO2 embodied in that Tesla than it does to equalize a Prius or a Ford Fusion Electric. Now, a Tesla is a lot more efficient than a Jeep Wrangler. Jeep Wrangler's pretty pathetic. Over its lifetime, it's about 94 tons of CO2. So here's the conclusions just from that. Number one, buy efficient vehicles regardless of type. Number two, hybrid vehicles are virtually as good as pure electric vehicles at reducing CO2. Number three, use vehicles as long as possible to reduce embodied CO2 impact. Next, I'd like to talk about solar panels. Solar panels are a wonderful, cosmetic, nice item to talk about. It's like, oh, I got solar panels, I've solved the problem. Well, solar panels also contain a lot of embodied CO2. The CO2 comes from the aluminum frame, the backing, the crystallized front silicon, which uses a ton of energy to produce. 1 kilowatt of solar uses 4,000 kilowatts of energy to produce. That's 4 tons of CO2. So the solar payback energy time, you put it on your roof, and you think you're gonna, you're clean right away. Well, that is not true, okay? It takes about 4 years to pay back the CO2 debt from that solar roof. Now, if the solar panels aren't produced, for instance, in China, where they use carbon, or Germany, where half of it's coal, or California, where it's 45% gas, if it's produced in Quebec, then yes, you can say your solar roof is nearly perfectly clean. But otherwise, if you buy those cheap solar panels from other places, you're living a lie in a way, okay? Next thing I want to talk about is the wastewater treatment plant in Oakville. Now, we have an open-air wastewater treatment plant. That means all the emissions from it go up in the air. They're not very measurable. There's a similar plant in Helsinki, and it's underground because of the freezing conditions. They measured the emissions from that plant. It was 0.5 kilogram of CO2 per meter cubed. That was mostly due to nitrous oxide and methane. So I would like the Oakville wastewater treatment plant to measure their emissions and report back. Let's see how efficient they actually are and see how much greenhouse gas they're producing. Number three, the town energy report. I'd like the town to tell us how efficient your systems are. How efficient are your furnaces? How efficient are your skating rinks? How efficient are your air conditioning units? I think the town of Oakville should lead, at least, for the community. I know you're only 1.35%, but it's important that you tell the community how you're acting so that we can decide whether or not to vote for you next time. Oakville Hydro, I don't see a carbon tax on the line item in our bills. We know that hydro uses sometimes natural gas. How come we don't have a carbon item on there? Finally, let's see what else I got here. Increasing the energy efficiency by 40% by 2041 is a great aspiration, but as a few people have said, what are the near-term goals? What can we actually achieve now? What is the action that's going to take place now? And those are my main points. Thank you very much.
The next delegation is Hart Jansen from the Halton Action on Climate Emergency Now.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, councillors. Let's see if before I introduce Hasten, I wanted to share an excerpt from a letter sent to Prime Minister Trudeau and his cabinet last Friday by three dozen Nobel laureates. It was in regards to the tech mine proposal, which is now moot. But the important thing is you can see that they were calling for a transition to zero carbon well before mid-century. And this reinforces the recent IPCC calls for 45% reduction from 2010 levels, but let's call it 50% reduction from 2016 levels, which is what the Community Energy Plan is using as a base. So we're all likely agreed on the need to reduce carbon emissions. But the important discussion that isn't well documented in the CEP is what is the scale and the urgency of the problem. So let's keep the scientifically validated goals in mind as we review the CEP. So Hasten, Halton Action for Climate Emergency Now is a nonpartisan volunteer group with members from the Council of Canadians, Grandmothers Acting to Save the Planet, and the general public. And we are a relatively new group formed in July of last year, but that's balanced by the fact that we have some rather old activists as members. Hasten's intent is to support efforts in Halton and Oakville in particular to lower carbon emissions in line with the thoroughly validated climate science that again indicates a 50% reduction in emissions is required from 2016 levels by 2030. We've been quite active since our formation in assessing the climate action plans and community energy plans of the Halton municipalities and understanding the mechanics and constraints of community-focused programs that can reduce emissions. We have also issued initial recommendations to the municipalities suggesting various means to reduce emissions in an effective and urgent manner. Hasten believes that it is vitally important to agree on and communicate the essential problem very clearly. As has been stated by other delegations, in Canada, we are among the most exorbitant emitters on the planet. In Oakville, on a statistical basis or a statistical average, we emit even more than the Canadian average with our larger houses, multiple cars, and higher consumption levels. We, again, as was demonstrated in the Sheridan video, we emit at least 10 times more than called for by the Paris Accord. And this problem definition, again, is not evident in the CEP report. If we are to do our part in averting a catastrophe, we must improve our targets and speed up our execution. So I want to laud the efforts of the task force. I echo the praise that you heard from Mervyn and from Aki Tanaka. I especially thank Councillor Longo and the dedicated staff in Oakville's Climate Action and Sustainability Group in both contributing to the CEP and in planning and beginning execution of the priority climate action projects within the town's purview. Hasten's goal tonight and moving forward is to inspire the public, the key private sector actors, and council in realizing the goals set out for the IMO and to inspire you to provide bold and innovative leadership to improve the targets set and meet the goals called for by well-documented climate science, and to assist in communicating these goals and motivating the public to get behind this challenge. Meeting the formidable challenge we have first calls for a clear recognition of the results required. And again, in our position of relative affluence and privilege, we bear a great responsibility individually and as a community to reduce our emissions quickly. So let's take heart from the mainstream support for net zero carbon by 2050. For example, the Liberals have stated this as their target for Canada. Even the oil industry, the new CEO for BP Oil, Bernard Looney, has stated that BP will be net zero for carbon emissions by 2050, not to mention many other international companies. If we meet the current goals stated in the CEP, then in 2041, we will still be emitting 5 times more than required to meet the Paris Accord. This cannot be the best we can do. The emissions problem is only implied in the CEP. Emissions are too high, but how much too high? Again, one of the key targets in the CEP was the money savings to the community, and there's certainly nothing wrong with saving people money and also creating local jobs, by the way. But the primary target must be emissions reduction. I would also point out that our neighbors to the north in Halton Hills have set out a community target of net zero carbon by 2030, a very aggressive target, which will be very difficult to achieve. But even if they achieve only 50% of that goal, they will be 11 years ahead of Oakville. Does the CEP respond appropriately to our climate emergency? As Mervyn mentioned, building a 1,000-bed hospital in 10 days is emergency pace. The CEP seems to set more of a leisurely pace. We're not suggesting that the task force and town staff are not working very hard and are very committed. There are just too few staff with too small a budget to get things moving quickly. I ask every member of council to ask themselves the 2 questions you see on your screen. And if you aren't answering yes to both of these questions, then more discussion and communication with the public is required to explain why. We must not be afraid to face reality. To give ourselves a chance to achieve what is needed, we must understand the facts and craft solutions that recognize the facts. And these goals and actions need to be set and taken as a collective. Community members and decision makers need to inspire and support one another. One of the important missing elements that I agree with another delegator is that we need intermediate targets. It's difficult to have confidence in a single target that's 21 years away with no intermediate milestones. So here are some concrete recommendations that could significantly speed up implementation of the Community Energy Plan. Note that the town's planned spending on the Community Energy Plan, as we understand it from limited information, is about $300,000. These recommendations would increase that spending by about $500,000 or $600,000. With this increase, it would still total less than half of 1% of the town's budget. So time doesn't permit delving into the detail of every recommendation, and there are more on the next slide, but we would be happy to sit down with town staff or task force members to discuss further. So please view this as our initial comments. So here are some more recommendations. Some of them apply directly to the CEP and some are additional. Again, time doesn't permit to discuss each of these. One key additional concern that we didn't have time to put into our slides is that it seems that the CEP implies additional fossil fuel-driven infrastructure for the district heating and thermal energy, and we would be strongly opposed to building new fossil fuel infrastructure. We have to get to electrification or renewable energy. So just to illustrate the choice that we face, I've got a graph here that shows what a more aggressive approach could achieve with about 80% reduction by 2040. So again, this is meant to be an illustration. It's not completely accurate. And we don't have the graphics experts that Sheridan and others have, so I had help from my 11-month-old grandson to complete this slide. And as we finished, he commented that even a child could understand this one. So we see the line from the previous chart now in black on the bottom. The current IMO-based plan is shown by the red line on the top, resulting in a 50% reduction in emissions by 2041. And the messy brown part in the middle shows the extra millions of tons of carbon emissions resulting from a less aggressive approach versus a more aggressive approach. I hope that we can collectively act in a manner appropriate to the climate emergency that we have declared. Oakville can and must do better. Thank you.
The last delegation listed is Lisa Kohler from Halton Environmental Network.
Good evening, Your Worship, councillors, staff, community members, members of the Community Energy Task Force, friends, colleagues. Thank you for the opportunity to delegate this evening on the motion to support the Community Energy Plan. My name is Lisa Kohler. I grew up in the town of Oakville. I'm a graduate of Sheridan College. I have a degree in environmental policy and analysis. I am Climate Reality Regional Organizer for the GTHA. I'm a proud board member of Green Communities Canada. I'm part of many community of practices in the environmental sector. And I was a proud volunteer on the Community Energy Task Force, as was Cindy Toth, HEN board member. I am also the executive director of the Halton Environmental Network. HEN propels programs in community that includes Halton Green Screens, Greening Sacred Spaces, Oakville Ready, and we are the backbone agency of the Halton Climate Collective. HEN is the lead facilitator of climate action and environmental sustainability in the community of Halton. Every day, I hear from faith-based leaders, business owners, students, and seniors who are speaking up and leaning into climate action. This council has made me a proud Oakvillian. You have listened to your constituents and declared a climate emergency. Thank you. You also understand the current climate challenges. You know the targets, goals, and the transformative change that is needed. You have embedded solutions that have worked in our community, and again, I am grateful. Tonight, I'm asking you to go on a new journey to ensure our community has a solution-based, collective approach to drive transformative change in our community. The Community Energy Plan and the work that the task force has been conducting is groundbreaking. Everyone who serves on the team needs to be thanked for their drive, dedication, and their commitment to a well-designed plan. We have a plan that may not be as ambitious as some may like, but it is pragmatic. It will ensure positive change, and it can be implemented. The plan is highly developed, allows solutions to be embedded in community, and has a collaborative and collective framework that will not only achieve desired mitigation results, but also allow for authentic community engagement. We know the path that will lead to success. We know we need skilled labor, products, the mechanism to implement the initiative, and more community education and buy-in. This plan takes into account these issues. As part of the Halton Climate Collective, we have heard over 2,800 community members. We have over 1,150 newsletter subscribers, and we have surveyed over 2,400 community members this summer alone. These numbers do not reflect the other thousands of concerned citizens that are part of HEN and our network. All these individuals who have been surveyed, who are engaged, who are speaking out, are asking for tangible solutions that will mitigate greenhouse gas emissions in a highly efficient and effective manner. They are worried about climate change, and they want solutions now. I'm happy to report that this plan will achieve what the community wants. During the past federal election, HEN was also involved in the 100 debates on the environment and more, with our great partners from CFUW Oakville, Garthweb High School, and GreenPAC. Once again, we heard from citizens, with hundreds coming out to listen to candidates discussing climate change. Again, our community was calling out for solutions. They want to do their part to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. And now with this plan, I can say we have a solution, and our community will be a leader in mitigation. Through the Halton Climate Collective Generation Green program, we heard from Uzair, one of our wonderful leaders tonight, but we also have engaged over 200 youth in community with Generation Green Youth Unconference. We have heard over 950 local youth voices. We currently have over 50 youth teams designing and leading projects that work on local mitigation. The youth are leaning in and doing their part to solve the climate crisis. And I would be thrilled to report to them, so are the adults. With this community plan, I feel I can. People are already taking individual actions. I hear of it every day. We have proof in our behavioral survey, and we engage the community through workshops, events, and outreach. With this plan, we will have a system-wide approach that will embed our community with solutions that will result in true transformative change. This initiative will support the climate emergency, it will drive local change, and I ask you to vote for the motion and support the community energy plan. Thank you for the opportunity to delegate.
Thank you, everybody. Councillor, do you have questions? Councillor O'Meara.
Thank you, Your Worship, and thank you to all the delegates who spoke. And due to the integrated, I guess, presentations, I'm not sure who this goes to, so I'm just going to cast it out, and the most appropriate person to step up would be greatly appreciated. I heard, I believe it was in John and Michelle's presentation, that there was a possibility to look to building standard improvements. Knowing that a lot of this is done under the Ontario Building Code, and we've had these discussions here at this table about some regressive changes they've recently made, I'm wondering if somebody can just speak to what they meant by building standard improvements and what authority we may or may not have to influence that.
Through you, Mr. Chair, I can actually speak to that initiative. There are ways in which the town can influence and opportunities for looking at green development standards. Also, our buildings, how we build our buildings, encouraging new developers or businesses that are coming into our community and building to overlay the community energy plan lens over their building. So there's many ways in which we can encourage and support. You're right, we do not have any control over the building code, and that is not what we meant, but there are ways in which we can encourage standards and improve standards and energy efficiency for buildings.
Okay, so I guess that's the term I was missing, is the encouraging, not mandating or changing. Okay. So just to follow up from that, and I know there were some people from the development community on the task force. I'm wondering if they're here to support this recommendation this evening.
Through you, Mr. Chair, Council did receive a letter in support of the initiative from Mattamy. Gary Gregoris, the VP for land development, did supply and I believe you were given a copy tonight as well. They are in support. They have been on our task force, as well as Minto have been on our task force. Roya is not here tonight, but again, they are supportive, and we are working with them to look at opportunities for how can we move sustainable development forward in different areas of Oakville.
Thank you for that. So from my reading of the strategy, there are large block things we can do as a community as whole, Oakville Hydro Corporation, large things. And then there are individual things we can do to our own homes. One thing I've found as being involved in my community is we actually get a lot done with like 20 people or 30 people who show up in small pockets, but they're very motivated to do things. I'm wondering what sort of strategic initiatives those blocks of people can do to be active, rather than I can do something to my specific home, or I can advocate for a town-wide change. I found real critical mass change comes with those sort of type groups. Is there anything that we have now, or will we be able to maybe moving forward develop those sort of block by block community initiatives that we can work to?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I think there is an answer as well that could come from the task force, but I can support the one of the first questions. That's why we have our community groups here. We had Hen, Oakville Green on our task force, and two members of the public at large, Pauline Watson and Harry Shea, who unfortunately couldn't be here tonight as well, to look to enable those small pockets of individuals. Hasten didn't speak, but had on their slide GASP, grandmothers, which are right over there. There they are, grandmothers. Yes, sorry, there's so many acronyms. Those are the small pockets that we are looking for. The IMO will be set up, and in the structure, there was the community relations manager, which we are really looking at that position to work with the community, to enable the community, to enable those small pockets. Also, during our engagement, we did go to residents associations. We're looking at Rotary clubs. We're in the schools. Again, another reason why the Halton District School Board is here. So there are many opportunities and ways in which the community can come together, community-based energy, renewable energy projects. Again, Hasten mentioned that in their slide as well. There's many ways in which small pockets can make a difference. And I think that is, although this is large, complex, transformative projects being mentioned in the community plan, there is still room for those small acts that lead to the many.
Okay, thank you very much. Your Worship, I'll leave with that, but I would like to table an amendment to the recommendation as well that I'll pass down to you. And that can be discussed at your discretion, but I'll put that forward now so that it's there and just read it briefly. The amendment states that staff be directed to review options to implement a specific tax levy to support dedicated funding for climate change initiatives in the town of Oakville as part of the 2021 budget process. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Councillor Elgar's next, I believe.
Thank you. Thank you for coordinating this tonight for us. And I got to say, Oakville's come a long way since the year 2000, I must say, in this area. But a lot of these CEPs, they don't work. Where in North America are they working? It sounds like Denmark's well on the way, way ahead, like centuries ahead of us. But where are they working in North America that we can learn from?
I'm going to divert to our co-chairs on this because I think they would be very excited to answer this question. So John or Michelle? They're going to fight over it, I guess.
So in creating the IMO, we really looked at a lot of existing organizations that have been set up that have been successful in different levels. You know, there was the one mentioned in Germany, and I'm going to butcher the name of the city, Boltrop, thank you, Germany. It's sort of the gold star standard of an implementation team. And so we've taken a lot of the lessons learned from that organization. Guelph, Guelph is another great example. They're currently looking for an executive director for their version of an IMO. So we've been in close communication with them as well. I believe Windsor, St. Catharines? Kingston, so that was the other one that we took some lessons learned. And Waterloo, thank you. And I could defer to our analytics expert to go into a little bit more detail if needed, but we have looked around, not just locally in North America, but also to some international best practices.
Okay, I appreciate that, because hopefully we can learn from all and be better than each one of them. So I thank you.
Yes.
Thank you for what you're doing.
Councillor Giddings.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Question concerning financing. We've seen a couple of different matters of helping residents here. Can you talk about municipal spending? It could be 10,000 houses at 20,000 apiece, or some variance of that. It could be several hundreds of millions of dollars. The benefits between municipal financing and third-party financing?
Through you, Mr. Chair. So I believe you are speaking to the conversation around the LIC, so the local improvement charge financing program through municipality, and or the potential of building a third-party corporation for residential energy for
Yeah,
retrofits.
who's gonna help residents when they want to retrofit with a heat pump or windows or whatever?
Sure. So I think this question actually would be best answered by the task force, as this would be an IMO initiative and discussion, or Peter. So I should introduce. Okay, so they're delegating even further. Peter Garforth is our lead consultant on the project, Garforth International, and has how many years of experience in energy, community energy planning. So he has brought a wealth of knowledge to us, so he can answer this as well.
There's a complicated answer and a short answer. So I'll go with the short answer. Basically, the home energy efficiency retrofit program is predicated on it being pretty much 100% third-party financed. So the financing would come from pension funds, from ethical investors, etc. So there's no, and it's designed in a way that it's cost neutral or cost positive for the homeowner. So in other words, it makes sense.
And these would be loans with some degree of grant depending on other levels of government funding?
Say that again.
Would these be fully paid back, or is there
Fully paid back.
a grant component from
Fully
the
paid
feds or
back, it would
province?
be a market-based product.
And that's much better, so we don't have to create the bureaucracy, hold the paper.
Precisely. In fact, the whole program would be based, and again, the business case has to be detailed out. That's one of the high priority actions of the IMO. But the strategic case is such that the complexity of the transaction is greatly reduced from the current environment. Therefore, it's easier to buy, easier to sell, much easier for the contractor to install, and much more cost effective.
And faster, by the sounds of it.
And very much faster.
Thank you.
Councillor Chisholm.
Thank you, Your Worship. I don't know who to ask this question to, but with respect to looking at, I'm looking at the dollars, the amount, and I've heard from some of the delegations, it's about money, it's about resources and paid resources and getting this moving as quickly as possible. I guess the question is, right now, we don't have any solid commitments from the business or the corporation sector with respect to dollars coming into this program. Is that correct?
So, through you, Mr. Chair, we have been working in parallel with the development of the community energy plan, where we have been having those conversations of support from some of our delivery partners and or the energy task force. And I can have John or Michelle stand up as one of the task force members to speak to this. We do have a high degree of interest in support, and that could be in kind as well as cash. And we do also, we are aware of many grant funding opportunities that could be accessed to support the IMO as well. But I'll let Michelle speak a little bit to that.
Yeah, so speaking on behalf of Sheridan, we really want to reinforce our commitment to Oakville and our commitment as an anchor institution in this community. And so our partnership in this venture isn't just about what's documented on paper and what's signed off, but we are committed to Oakville. There's a transition between what the task force is doing and then the IMO itself. And that's something that I can come to you as the lead for the team at Sheridan, saying we are committed to helping through that transition. We do have an MOU, that MOU will be renewed. But aside from the MOU and aside from what's actually signed, I can stand here today and commit to you that our team's resources will be here to help this transition. And I don't think I only speak for Sheridan, but the level of commitment that we've seen, the level of engagement in this task force, and who is actually represented on this task force. I haven't been involved in a community group that's been as powerful and impactful as this group. I've been so impressed, and it's been an absolute honour to be able to spend time with these people. And so the commitment doesn't just walk away, but I think I can speak for the entire task force that we're committed to work with you. Never mind what's signed or unsigned, we're committed to follow this through and see this work for this amazing community.
Thank you for that dissertation, but my concern is that if we're moving forward, the bottom line is that we need to have money to make this work. And what I'm seeing right now, I don't see anything strong on the business or corporation side, but I'm assuming, or I'm going to project here, is that as we move along, as fluid it is that we'll have companies and corporations coming on the financial side in order to make this a go. Would that be a safe assumption?
Through you, Mr. Chair, yes, that is definitely a safe assumption. The business community is also waiting for this endorsement from council to bring some certainty to this plan moving forward. They need the leadership. They need to see the value. They need to see the investment. I do know that we have a task force standing behind us that have committed and already met in 2020. We have met with many organizations and companies outside of even the task force that are interested in bringing forward resources. But again, they're waiting to see that endorsement and that move forward. I do think we will have significant commitment in this community.
Councillor Dudek, I think. Councillor Haslett-Steele then.
One of the delegates asked the question, what's in it for business? And I just wondered if one of the community energy members would stand up and maybe want to answer that question. What you see is in it for business, because I think I think you deserve an opportunity to answer that on behalf of all the effort you've put into it as business leaders.
Great. John from our Oakville Energy Task Force will answer that one.
I think there's a couple of different angles we can look at for that. I mean, I'm, in addition to being the co-chair of this task force, I also an employee at Hatch, and when I look at the opportunities that, I can't speak for all private companies, the entire private sector, but our mission is really focused in on applying our vast engineering and business experience to some of the world's toughest challenges, building safe, innovative, and sustainable solutions. This is arguably the toughest challenge in the world right now, and it's an exciting opportunity for a 9,000 person company headquartered down the road to be helping with. So we are, as earlier mentioned, looking forward to the endorsement of council, and I can't stand here today committing dollars, but there's certainly been a lot of conversations about it in lieu of endorsement and other factors. But what's in it for business more broadly, there are a couple of opportunities to create new businesses in the community under the strategy. There's targets to deploy more rooftop solar or ground-based, just generally more solar. That creates local jobs, that creates installers, that, electricians and roofers and et cetera. There's an opportunity to create a new district energy company that would, again, keep dollars in the community. There's opportunity for this energy retrofit company that was mentioned. Again, creating jobs, creating local employment, GDP growth, and keeping the dollars in the economy. So I think there's huge opportunity. In fact, I've heard quoted from Bloomberg, this is the largest potential economic opportunity in the world. So I'm not sure if I answered your question or not, Councillor.
Thanks very much.
Any other members of council? Councillor Adams.
Thank you very much. One of the delegations, or a couple of the delegations, questioned the targets that are being used or the goals that are being sought to be met. And I wondered if our staff could clearly outline how the CEP program matches up against the goals of the Paris Agreement and the need to hold temperatures to certain temperatures by certain dates, and why were the chosen targets or chosen goals chosen?
Sure. Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll let Denise, or again, the project manager, answer this question.
We had a lot of conversation about what the goal would be for 2041, picking that time horizon because it aligned with our official plan. And the conversation really came to what can we build a pathway for? So we're really looking at, given the current technology, tools, mechanisms, systems that we see globally are proven to work today, what could we apply to reach a target? So when we're setting this target here, we're setting one that we know we can achieve and we can work towards. Also bearing in mind that technology is going to change, and this plan will have to be looked at in the future and be updated with evolving technology. I wanted to note that the town participates in the Showcase City pilot that's running this year. Our target will meet the Showcase City's requirement for setting an ambitious greenhouse gas reductions target. So although it slightly exceeds actually the Canadian greenhouse gas emission target that we have right now, Canada has committed to the Paris Climate Agreement, but we have as a nation a 2030 greenhouse gas emission reduction target. And so we are actually exceeding that.
It's not written down in a really clear way that's easy to communicate, and that I think is a really important element of it. There's a huge amount of work that's gone into the community energy plan. I'm going to support it because it's the only thing in front of us. And but I would like to get some better information to clearly understand how it lines up with others in terms of the community. We as a town, as a corporation, have outlined really, really clearly what our targets are, and I'm actually surprised that the task force didn't say, yeah, that's a good target, you should keep up with it as a municipality, or you ought to change it to something else. Is that something that we will eventually see a review of our own target?
Through you, Mr. Chair, currently the community energy plan focuses less on the corporate energy target, the town's corporate energy target, and actually calls for implementation of our corporate conservation demand management plan. Again, aligning with the focus of this community energy plan to really push for implementation and for action-based perspective. That is something that might be reviewed and considered in future iterations when the plan is updated in 5 years.
Okay, and so if I were to ask for staff to report on how the CEP aligns with global and national greenhouse gas reduction targets, could staff respond to that at a later date?
Yeah, through you,
provide
Mr.
that
Chair. Well,
information?
actually, we will be bringing information or report on our Showcase City initiative as well as our corporate climate action work. And in that report, we can have that discussion around our targets and how they align with the community energy plan.
And when does that happen?
That will be closer to the end of the year.
End of the year, okay. And thank you very much. I'm going to leave it to others, but I'm going to draft a request for some additional reporting.
Councillor Knoll.
Thank you, Worship. First of all, congratulations to everybody involved, our colleague, Mr. Longo, all the volunteers and professionals involved. This is a terrific plan, and I support it wholeheartedly. I have a couple technical questions I just want to clarify. So we learned a lot about the fact that the residential sector is a major contributor, and a big part of the plan is to develop a strategy to actually retrofit homes. And one of the key drivers, of course, of carbon consumption or carbon emissions at home is heat. So the obvious choice would be move from fossil fuels to electric. So the first question is probably directed at the president of Oakville Hydro. And we've had this conversation before about electric vehicles and the impact on the grid of electric vehicles. If we're moving from if we want to move to a system where we can practically move towards electrification of heat pumps, whatever, does our grid currently, would it be sufficient to be able to achieve that goal? If we were to increase the number of electrically heated homes by a sizable percentage over the next couple decades?
Thank you for the question to you, Mr. Mayor. Presently, yes, the grid would be able to handle that on the premise that there's an awful lot of capacity at nighttime, and that can be translated through heating and charging at night, and you can use energy at night and store that through different means for heating during the day and for other consumption. So at the moment, it would not be a grid constraint.
And I'm just recounting from my own experience, because I've gone through the experience of trying to figure out how to get an electric car charger into a home with 100 amp service. And when I did that, my licensed electrician said, I have to dial it back because your home is only a certain number of amps. So without getting too technical, my charger is 40 amps, but it's dialed back to 30 because I didn't have the capacity. So even though you can shift charging, do we have the legislative ability within the electrical code in order to even do that at this point, or does that require any legislative change that you can overburden an electrical service yet still provide for time shifting? You need to call an engineer?
Well, I can give you my view here. You can load up your electrical panel to amounts further than the rated of the electrical panel. You just can't use it all at the same time. And many panels are loaded more than what the actual rated of the panel is, and that's not uncommon. So there are some limitations, but with a 100 amp panel, you can, as long as you're prepared to shut some other things off in an overnight, but you wouldn't be running your dishwasher and your hot tub and your pool pump at the same time you might be charging your car in some homes.
Yeah, that's great news. Now, one of the other concerns that came up, and I believe Mr. Jansen mentioned, is he was concerned, and this probably is, I don't know if this is for you or for whom else it would go to, there was a concern about district energy being just another transference of fossil fuel heating and cooling from from source to a district environment. Are there other practical means of generating energy at the district energy level rather than fossil fuels?
There are, and usually it's not an either or, but it's a combination of things. But you can provide energy to district heating through geo-exchange systems, through solar systems, through storing, well, the other way around. If you look at an ice rink, it produces ice, so you can take that ice and use that for cooling in situations, or you can use the heat generated from the equipment. So there are different ways to have much more efficient systems. Other thing is we have surplus of good clean electricity at nighttime. You could be heating your home with electricity at night, but you could be using gas during the day, and although that's not getting rid of gas totally, it's a good compromise, and there certainly can be very, very significant greenhouse gas reductions by just cutting gas consumption down and supplementing with electricity and using both sources. So combining the two fuels.
And is this a common practice in district energy now, or is this something that
super common. There are, there are locations around the world certainly that's happening, but not in Oakville and not in Ontario as much.
But the
there's
technology,
great opportunity.
The technology exists to use.
Absolutely, technology exists.
Okay.
Absolutely.
That's great. Thank you. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you, Councillor Robertson.
I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Peter Longo for all the work you've done, because I think that you've come back to us with this sense of credibility all the way through and really encouraged us to talk about it, and the fact that the meetings were public. And I want to thank everyone that's here, because there's a lot of role models I have sitting in this room right now in terms of activism and the people that have inspired me. I want to ask 2 questions to kind of go to get to where they are with this. When this task force, when the IMO is started, will the task force dismantle?
Through you, Mr. Chair, I'll let the co-chairs speak to the IMO.
We'll come up together this time.
No. Short answer is no. As the organizational chart depicted, the intention is that a subset or all of, we haven't really got to the details, but some component of the existing task force would move into an advisory board offering into the IMO, so that there's consistency in the delivery of the IMO with the 2 years of experience that have been put into actually creating the plan. Some subset of the task force may end up being actual board members on a more traditional board within the IMO as well. So no, we will be disbanding.
Okay, so then that goes to my second question, because I know one of the pieces that the delegates were looking for were better reporting times, not waiting until 2041, which I assume isn't going to happen anyways. But will it be the IMO that sets the direction for coming back to town staff and saying, this is where we at in terms of targets, so town staff can come to us and report?
So I think there's a lot of really good feedback that we received tonight from all of the delegations, and we've noted that feedback, and as a task force we'd like to review all of that. I think what's really, really exciting about tonight is that we're all in agreement that we need this plan and we need to move forward, and the fact that we have people delegating saying we want to be more ambitious is actually really exciting. That said, we do believe in the plan itself, and we do believe that it's important to have what we regard as carefully considered and achievable goals. But there are some really good points that have been raised tonight that we'd like to look at as a task force, and then perhaps that's something that Suzanne and Denise can include in a future report to council.
That's good, because I'd like to see that the task force then advises the executive director. I'm not sure how much power that executive director will have over things like that. That's as an area of advice for them to come back to us regularly. Thank you.
All right, and there's no other questions. I'm going to briefly say that I think the hardest work in life is to collaborate as a community, especially one like ours with so many different talents and voices and beliefs, and then through that to create an agreed consensus plan. That's no small achievement anywhere, and I think a bigger achievement in Oakville. The plan is one we can embrace, and I believe that it will help us face the challenges ahead of us to do better, and this is the most important thing, than we have been doing so far, which is not nearly good enough. And as Dr. Russell kindly said, it is, when you're criticizing things, important to remember that if you insist too hard on the perfect, you might not get anything. I paraphrase. So we owe our thanks to the Community Energy Plan Task Force for this great start. And I thank you for that. And I applaud you. And that's all this is a great start. And council doesn't fund anything and then not get reports. Banish that thought, whoever thought that was going to happen. And the chair now recognizes Councillor Longo.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'd like to thank the co-chairs of the Oakville Energy Task Force, Michelle and John, for doing such a great job, as well as Oakville staff and the consulting team that put the CEP together, as well as the amazing support in the audience here of the delegates and the great information you've shared and you know, to push us forward. So I'd actually like to put forward the motion, and I'd like to add Councillor Ramirez as a fifth to it. So if you bear with me, I'll read out the motion. Do you want me to? Oh.
Councillor Adams, do you have a piece to add?
I only wished if you'd be willing to add that staff report on how the CEP aligns with national and international greenhouse gas reduction goals, I would be much appreciative.
We got that.
Thank you.
You got that? Okay, so item 1, the Oakville Community Energy Plan report dated February 12th, 2020 be received. Number 2, that the Oakville Energy Task Force Community Energy Plan strategy and priority projects be endorsed. Item 3, that the financial contribution of $100,000 in 2020 be made by council in support of the Oakville Energy Task Force Implementation Management Office. Number 4, that the council authorize an extension of the Memorandum of Understanding between Sheridan College and the town of Oakville to September 2020. Number 5, that the staff be directed to review options to implement a specific tax levy to support dedicated funding for climate change initiatives in the town of Oakville as part of the 2021 budget process. And the last item, I guess we'd captured related to...
That staff report to council on the alignment of the plan with the international and national targets for greenhouse gas reduction. Is that right?
Close enough. I can give the clerk the words I had here. But
all right.
Good.
Well, I regret any discrepancy. I got to see how far away was I? A staff report on how the CEP aligns with national and international greenhouse gas reduction goals.
Like I said, really close.
Thank you.
Well done.
You had me doubting myself.
So if I can put that motion to vote, and I'd ask for a recorded vote if possible.
Mr. Clerk, can you repeat number 5?
Sure.
So I didn't catch it all.
That the staff be directed to review options to implement a specific tax levy to support dedicated funding for climate change initiatives in the town of Oakville as part of the 2021 budget process.
Okay, thank you.
Councillor Adams.
May I speak to the motion?
You can do anything you want. You're recognized.
Oh, then thank you. First of all, I want to thank Councillor Longo for the many, many hours that he spent on this. I know from speaking with him that he spent hours going through the details of the reports to try to make sure that it was worded right, that it was dealt with properly, and all kinds of things like that. So I thank you for your extra diligence on this issue. I want to thank all the task force members. Oodles of time was spent on this. I want to thank our staff members who supported this as well. On the issue of the council budget and the concept of a dedicated piece, I welcome the concept of pulling this particular issue out to make it more obvious for people how much we already do spend and what we will spend on climate-related things. Right now, our budget includes greenhouse gas reduction kind of projects in virtually every single department and program that we have. And it's not pulled out in a single line item. It doesn't say, here's the greenhouse gas reduction cost, but it's buried in our transit. It's buried in all of our facilities management programs, all kinds of places where we do stuff that I'll say, there's no credit for it. It's part of what we do. It's part of how we do things. And the only time it shows up is when we get our report on our corporate greenhouse gas reduction goals. But I welcome the idea of showing people all the different things that we do that relate to changing the way that we do transportation, all the money that we spend on active transportation, that's all part of our community energy plan. And so I think that's a good idea to try to communicate all these things. So thank you very much again to all of those who have taken part. And as Mayor Burton said, this is the beginning. I do believe that we're going to need to do more, and we're going to need to change course as we go along and learn. But this is an excellent start, and it's you got to start somewhere, and this is a good place to start.
Thank you, Councillor. Other speakers? Shall I put the vote? To be recorded in favor of this historic enterprise, please rise to be named. Councillor O'Meara, Councillor Robertson, Councillor Duddick, Councillor Chisholm, Councillor Giddings, Councillor Haslett-Thiel, Councillor Elgar, Councillor Longo, Councillor Knoll, Councillor Adams, and Mayor Burton. I declare the measure carried unanimously, and I thank everyone for your hard work. I need a mover and seconder for the bylaws. Councillor Chisholm, Councillor Giddings, all in favor? That's carried. The meeting has come to the end of its assigned workload. It's been a pleasure working with all of you and our community, and I thank you for your time and your thought and your questions and your contributions, and I declare the meeting adjourned.